Plug that guy in.
There we go. Perfection.
Maybe is the dumbest thing in the world. Pretty good at solving the problems. I just never know what I did to fix them.
Yeah, what problem? Well, and also knowing which problem was the one that needed to be fixed.
Oh yeah, it makes no sense at all.
No. All right, thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Of course.
All right. Well, that's working. Okay. All right. Let's see. All right. Check, check, check. Check, check, check.
And it looks like it actually went through.
Well then.
Yeah.
I wonder what's going on.
I don't know.
Other random fun stuff that Jason's been asking questions about too, because we basically trying to like, he was trying to look at some of the DDoS mitigation options, you know, which include like trying to get someone else to get the bulk of the traffic instead of our actual servers, you know, CDN, etc. So W3 Total Cache has an option for full site delivery, but you have to. It's not very deep.
Let's go. All right. Let's see here. I'm trying to gauge what the delay is between us chatting and the stream. One Mississippi.
Is it say something?
Mississippi. 3 Mississippi.
147 Mississippi.
Yeah. Okay, so we will kick off the November brown bag. Hi folks, I'm Matt Goins, the trainer with the WiscWeb team. And we are meeting this month just to kind of go over a few things. We haven't had a lot to update over the last couple of months really, just because of the fact that while we're working on a lot of stuff that is internal and system related, a lot of that stuff hasn't been seen too much on the user side of things. You know, we've updated the theme to 1.7, I believe. That was last month. We had updated WordPress core. I'm gonna touch on that in a minute here because we're gonna update again coming Monday. But a lot of the stuff is behind the scenes. We continue to work on server stability and you know, trying to address those issues. It seems like every day could potentially be a new adventure for mainly, you know, Phil and Jenna, who are looking at the server information a lot, and other folks who you guys don't get to meet on a regular basis, but some other members of our WPS team as a whole that have been looking at a lot of that stuff as well. So we do encourage you, if you ever see anything, we did get an email this morning about some concerns. If you ever see anything coming up with your site, either things acting weird or general site slowness, don't hesitate to reach out to us, just because of the fact that sometimes we'll be in our own world working on some things and we might not catch that something's down right away. But as soon as we do, we try to make sure that we communicate that out as soon as possible and start poking at it on our end to see what might be going on our end as fast as possible. So that's kind of the general stuff that we've been working on behind the scenes. Just to kind of give you guys a few updates about what's going on coming up, as well as just kind of open it up for some questions, that might be out there. I wanted to send out just a little general reminder about our open labs. Our open labs are, for most of you who know this, our open labs are twice a week, 2 hours at a time, down in B207 usually, unless that room is not available to us. it's manned by myself, other members of the team who are available to be there, developers. Then also we have the Center for Digital Accessibility and User Experience folks, the CDOCS folks, are also attending those. And we really do encourage people to stop in and meet with some of those user experience and accessibility folks, because a lot of times questions come up about, page layouts, how things are working, trying to do some different things with your content, trying to do some different things with your navigation structures. Those folks are very good at answering those questions. They're also very good at kind of asking you back some of those questions, just to kind of get a feel for what is it that you're trying to do, what is it that your users are needing. So I really do want to encourage people to make use of the open lab times to meet with those folks as well. Not to say that we don't want to see you, but they're there and they are an excellent resource to take advantage of. We'll talk a little bit about the upcoming schedule as well in a second here. But that was the first topic that I wanted to touch on. There's the second, which is the second that we were going to talk about, which is our support schedule coming up. So obviously we're hitting Thanksgiving next week. We get into December. We get into the general holidays of Christmas, New Year's, and things like that. So we are going to be around. A lot of us are taking vacations here and there throughout December, but mostly I think next week is the week where we'll be a little bare bones, and the last 2 weeks of December, right?
Yes.
Okay. So we'll be around. We'll have some folks manning the support queue. We'll have some folks trying to make sure that nothing's happening from a server status standpoint. That stuff we've got handled. But from a support standpoint, it will be as best we can during that time frame. Jenna and I are going to meet to kind of figure out when we'll be available to kind of make sure the queue is not overwhelming. But basically, just know that if it's not site breaking, if it's not something where your site's down, content's not showing up, things of that nature, we'll get to it as we can. We'll try and handle the emergency things as quickly as possible over that time frame, just to make sure that, like I said, your content is out there for your audience to see during those 2 weeks, during those 3 weeks, next week being one of those values there. So anything to?
I think that's
Okay.
Maybe just mention
hi, Phil.
things that could happen, from now until even January.
I could mention it,
No,
but you're
just-
speaking, so you may
I'm just
mention
gonna
it.
go ahead and mention them.
All right, then.
So we're gonna do the WordPress core 5.3 update. We'll be
Yeah.
talking about that in a second.
Yep.
That one was a planned release by the WordPress team. Entirely possible there'll be some kind of a security fix that'll happen for core between now and, again, maybe January before everyone's back from vacations. Those are incredibly targeted to, if that happens, they're incredibly targeted to the only thing that actually, is an issue. So what we've seen in the past is that actual security fixes, like, we don't see any problems that actually come up from them regarding how your sites work, etc. So if those things occur, we will get them applied as soon as we can. And like I said, every time that they've done this, they were really good about not breaking anything else besides that. Other than that, I think there is not, and you can totally correct me if I'm wrong here, we did a WordPress theme update. There isn't necessarily another one between now and January scheduled at this point.
No.
So those are some of the stability things that are happening. And then I think probably Jenna would chime in with, they have a thing that they refer to try to slow down, like to make sure that we're especially in things like, finals week, don't go do a bunch of crazy server changes, unless like something is straight up down and you need to do something to turn it back on, right?
Yeah.
So that's a general like idea that they try to do with some of the change management. And that's fine. We're not scheduled to do any crazy stuff like that during times like end of finals week or even just the end of the year when there isn't a whole lot of people around.
Yeah, so what Phil's referring to is what's called a change freeze, and a change freeze is a campus-wide
It's a do it
stipulation, implemented campus-wide
for IT
stipulation.
change control within do it.
Oh, I thought it was campus.
I don't think it's campus-wide.
Well, do
Your
it
department could
specifically.
choose to say, don't go break stuff. in
I
finals
suppose,
week,
yeah.
it's a good idea.
Okay, so from a do it
The one we're
standpoint,
talking about is.
yeah, it's an us thing. It's a service-wide functionality where during certain times of the year, mainly those times when we don't want systems down, like finals week or the first week or two of semesters, um, we won't implement any specific changes unless they are emergency changes, because we don't want to accidentally bring down someone's site like housing, registrar's office, grad school, things of that nature where there may be a large majority of audiences that could be affected by that content being down. So we try not to make any changes during those timeframes unless they are some sort of emergency security patch that just has to happen. But I think we've been pretty successful in doing some of those patches and not bringing anything down of recent. So I guess pat on the back. So yeah, we'll touch on the WordPress core update in a little bit here. Let's see, next topic, help desk coming on to tier 1 support. So we've talked about this in the past. This is something that we have mentioned about the fact that we've wanted to try and integrate help desk themselves more into our support process to offload some of the, I guess, easier questions that do come in, some of the easier support tickets that do come in. A lot of times the adding new users, how do I launch my site, those types of things. Those are things that we're going to have help desk start to handle initially, and then if things are more, I guess, team necessary, those will be kicked up to us to start to troubleshoot a little bit from there. So just mainly that's to let you guys know that you might start hearing from other voices aside from Jenna and I in the support queue. Don't be alarmed. We're going to be training them the first week of December, I believe. We have a couple of trainings scheduled for then, so they'll be coming on early in January. Was that?
Sometime in January.
Yeah, I can't
That might change.
Okay.
But yeah, plan is January.
Yeah. So they're going to be coming on to support, and again, that's mainly just from a standpoint of giving you guys hopefully faster turnaround on some of those easier questions, and then also to alleviate some of the support queue that comes in that Jenna and I handle on a regular basis. So with that being said, with that training coming up, I have updated the training documentation. This has been kind of an ongoing effort of mine to want to do. But on the training page, I have updated my handout that I give out when I do the beginners training. Mainly the biggest difference that is in this version that is not in the previous version is I've tried to put in a lot of content and conversation about not so much the how to, but also the why to. And then also I wanted to put in little notes of accessibility that I hit on quite heavily during the training, but I want to make sure that you all have it documented as well when you leave the class and when you are hopefully referring back to it whenever you're doing any work with your sites moving forward. But again, that documentation is now out there on my training page. So if you have new users coming on and they haven't been able to go through the training yet, this is a pretty good rundown of almost verbatim of what I will say in the actual class itself. So I wanted to make sure I pointed that out just for folks who are hiring new students, hiring new folks coming on to handle some of their web duties, and they haven't been able to get to the trainings yet. So that was done. That was finalized last week, and then I just started using it yesterday in my class. So, by the way, stream folks, if you have questions, type them in, because we're going to get to the end of my agenda here pretty quick, and we got time. So leading into that with the updates conversation, we have WordPress core update on Monday morning. We're going to do that between 7 and 9 a.m. It appears to be a small update on the user end of things. I will put this in an email probably tomorrow to just remind everyone who's not in on the brown bag. This link will be out there. The actual version 5.3 is what we're going to be updating to. Again, a lot of stuff in there that's probably not going to affect you, but it's going to affect on our end, on the developer's end and on the system end of things. But there's some things where some automatic image rotation will show up in there. The site health check you actually won't see because this is something that only the global admins see. So don't worry about that so much. And we haven't really tinkered around with what that means yet. So we're going to test this out a little bit to see if it has some relevance that we might want to share with folks out there. And then what did we decide on the admin verification?
Yep, we're putting a filter in so they should
Okay,
see it.
yeah, so this one also, there is a filter that is going to be put in place on our end so that you shouldn't see this. All it does is it pops up a little message that says, hey, are you sure this is your email? Yes. But we don't want you guys to have to worry about that because you all have a lot of editors and administrators that you don't want to freak out with a particular message there.
And as of right now, the source of that email address is based on what information is related to your net ID. It's like, what is your preferred email address? Mm-hmm. In other words, that might not even work.
That might
anyways.
not be accurate.
Like you may not be able to change it even if you wanted to there because it's not the source. And that's something we got to talk to the rest of the campus community about as well because if they updated it for WordPress 5.3, they might have the same problem.
Yeah.
They should plug it.
Yeah, and so we do have folks who we interact with quite a bit who aren't actual WiscWeb customers. So, it's good to know that 5.3 is out there and that you may want to update it as well. But just be aware of some of these changes that are coming with that update that's out there. I was trying to think, was there anything else that the issues that you're seeing with your menu stuff, is that unique to you or was it unique to dev or
Part of that was how many sites I had associated with me that were launched.
Okay.
I mean, we could go over that if they're seeing it. We could see. Sure.
I didn't see it, so I can't
just
demo it.
We did notice one thing with the 5.3 update with your My Sites dropdown. If you have a lot of sites associated with your NetID, shouldn't affect very many people though.
Yeah.
So let us know if it's a bother to you or if you're noticing anything weird with the dropdown.
Yeah, it was a very weird instance where Jenna had it basically cascaded out a whole bunch to the right within her My Sites menu, but it was really only happening to her and not to others. So it was weird it was hard to pinpoint what exactly the issue was. Is it in QA for testing?
No.
5.3? No. Okay.
Nothing to test.
That's
actually the hilarious part. If you read the release notes for 5.3, there's like nothing to test.
Yeah.
They what is it? They made a change. Like the biggest things I saw were like they changed some of the way the Gutenberg blocks work.
Yeah.
We aren't using those.
We aren't.
So.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and what he's looking at here, if you just go to WordPress.org, they have a link to get you out to this release notes thing, and it's.
But a lot of the stuff.
Not much there.
Yeah, I mean a lot of the stuff, and even in this instance where there's stuff up there that we turn off. We don't use the Gutenberg editor right now because we haven't built the theme out to handle the Gutenberg editor, so it's not something that we can use. Other things are, they're developer updates that our developers will have to take some time to actually see, whether or not, it's something that we can take advantage of. There's some PHP compatibility that some of our devs have started to take a look at to see what that means for them. But again, it's hard to say what effect you're going to see on your end. We just want to make sure that you're aware of the fact that we're going to update it, so it's going to be out there. So that's that. I threw in this one just a little while ago. So for those of you who are using the events calendar, we've seen some weird And it's only been 2 sites that have contacted us about it, but a lot of times I don't know if people just aren't paying attention to it. But one of the weird things that we have seen happening and that we've had to troubleshoot is if you have events happening on a particular day and before that event actually happens on that day, the event is disappearing from your list. Like if you're using any of the short codes to display the events on the page itself, similar to this right here. There's a time zone setting within WordPress that for some sites had been set to UTC plus 0, I think was what the time zone had been set to. And essentially what was happening was the time zone wasn't reading right and it was assuming that the day had passed once, you got to a particular day. So what I've had to go in and do is update that time zone setting to be set to Chicago Central Time. And it has fixed so far the 2 sites that we have seen this issue arise in. So just to point out, if for those of you who are using Events Calendar, just take a look as you're using it to see if any issues are coming up with your events falling off when you're using this short code earlier than what you anticipate them disappearing on. Okay. Questions from the floor and the internet. I had one question come in earlier through the email list. Someone who was going to be watching the stream wanted to know about setup process for Google Analytics and some other conversation about data visualization and things like that. Whenever it comes to things like Google Analytics, Google Tag Manager, the Google Search Console, other types of search engine optimization and data tracking type stuff, really I just encourage you to come into an open lab. And if you're going to come into an open lab with a very specific question like that, let me know ahead of time when you're coming in, because I want to make sure that somebody will be in the room that can actually walk you through that conversation as well. Namely, usually it's going to be Jonathan, or we might tap somebody from the CDocs group like Adam Hillsmeyer to have that conversation with you, mainly because it's a very specific question about some things that the 2 of them have dealt with quite a bit in their work with various aspects of analytics. So in those cases, drop us a line, let us know you're coming in, and I'll make sure that I can have somebody around to answer those questions specifically. So, Brendan, you got anything? You're just hanging out?
The only,
Sub smells good.
yeah, I've been trying to fix an error with the event calendar with the locations and the Google API thing.
Oh.
Not quite working the way.
Okay.
But that's a pretty specific.
Yeah, and that's a few folks who have just been coming on to our service. I guess that's a good reminder about the Google Maps thing, where the Google Map functionality within Events Calendar changed about 2 years ago now, I believe it is, where Google changed their API in that you had to sign up for the ability to use Google Maps within particular software, I guess, in particular plugins, the Events Calendar being one of those, and using their API, where it went to, it's free up until a number of hits, but you still had to set up an account with them and still enter credit card information with them to be able to use the Google Maps functionality. From our standpoint, it just wasn't worth struggling with trying to support that process, so we turned it off for us. The option's there for you if you want to use Google Maps, and for some groups it makes sense because of the nature of the group that wants to use it, your widespread housing being one of those where you have a lot of locations on campus that you do want to point out. The ability to embed Google Maps wasn't affected by this, so that would be one option, is you could use that if you wanted to embed some content on a page from Google Maps, not pulling from the API directly. That might be a conversation to have as well. What else?
Letta had some questions about publications.
Yeah, but that's Jonathan specific, and he's been made aware
I
of
think
it.
just in general.
Yeah.
In general, I'm going to say if there's issues with the publications plugin, we just ask that you submit a support ticket and we'll review. That plugin is meant to be used by the majority of campus, so we can't necessarily accommodate all requests for like customizations to it. We have to assess it against like need across campus, but we'll do what we can to like fix bugs and document your
Feature
needs.
type things,
Yeah.
feature things that aren't working as intended or as expected, kind of thing. Which is what Linda's is. It's an interesting feature that was built into the Pubs plugin. A reminder: some of the plugins may not be accessible to you right away because we have set them to be request only. So things like publications, things like events calendar, things like content sharing. I think those are the ones that are out
Did
there.
you say events calendar?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You'd have to drop us a line to request them to be turned on for your site.
Talking about how we're going to be changing that too.
What?
Like that we're going to make a page so you can actually turn on.
Yeah, but I want to wait until we actually have that mocked up so that we can show it to people and specifically to administrators of their sites to let them know what steps they have to take. We're gonna try to make it a little bit easier for you to turn on and off the plugins that we have in our repository from an administrator standpoint, because some of you might not care to have WP data tables, but it's on for everyone. You might want to turn it off. So that's one of those things where we're looking at just creating some good quality of life internal workings there. I don't know. I can't think of anything else. The stream's quiet. Yeah. Well, nothing big's been happening from our end. That's
it's a lot of back.
I mean, we can
behind
sit
the
here and just
scenes.
chat. And,
Yeah.
what's going on? I'm trying to build out more trainings, I promise you. It's just that the other things come up, and I know people want to learn a little bit more about how to do some of the things. I don't know, what's some things that have come up lately?
I think I can comment on
Go ahead.
performance stuff. So we haven't forgotten about performance. We're just a lot of the things that we would want to do to positively impact performance requires a good deal of exploration and then implementation time. And so we're hoping that we can move some things forward soon here that should create a nice impact. Definitely, like Matt said earlier, let us know if you're having a lot of issues. One thing we've noticed, we've gotten a couple emails from folks that are saying that their pages are loading slowly. And in several of those cases, we found that the file size of the images used on those pages are actually what's contributing to the slow load time. So in general, we have some recommendations for how to optimize those photos.
Did that change with the last theme update, like the image page element? Like it doesn't do it in the text blocks.
In that one, and I think there's some that are still in the works.
Yeah.
But in general, if you don't need to use a really large image size, we recommend optimizing them.
Yeah.
We can give you tips for that in an open lab. But if you write in and say, like this page is loading slowly and we find that it's images, that's probably what we're talking about.
Yeah, so just to kind of hit on what Jenna's touching on, I'll go into my training environment just to kind of give you an idea of one of the things that we look at right away is if you put some general text in here and you decide you want to drop an image in, you grab an image that is, I'm not gonna have a large, I suppose 3 megabytes. 3 megabytes is a pretty decent sized image. When you put the full size image in, it's not only loading the full size, it's a responsive image, which means it's going to shape itself to the size of the
Viewport.
Container.
Device.
the viewport, yeah, the viewport, yeah, like, so like, if it's on a mobile device, it'll shrink it down to the size of
Oh,
the
I see.
mobile window there. The problem is, regardless of the size of the image that's being displayed, if you choose full size, it's gonna be 3 megabytes. Now, this is a generous one, because we have seen in a few of our sites, that number could be somewhere near 10 megabytes in size.
That's compressed.
We've seen, yeah, and we've seen some, what are some other examples that we've had in the past? People have tried to put up like PDF posters in the past, and they'll take their poster and put it into Photoshop and save it out as a JPEG. And when it saves it out, it's saving out a large, like it's saving out a 15 plus megabyte sized image.
This is an accessibility issue.
Yeah, well, that's a different beast entirely. But you just have to be aware of the fact that you want to make sure that when you're choosing to place an image on the page, try to use one of these other smaller options, because these are more optimized for your page. But also there's, I guess Paulina's here. Paulina, do you remember off the top of your head what a good optimizer site was?
For images?
Yeah.
Honestly, like, tiny PNG. What is it? Let me look at the, yeah, it's like tinypng.com.
Yeah, so
That's a good one.
let me see if I have a,
And imagecompressor.com.
I think
Those are
image,
the ones that I use quite
yeah.
often. They're very easy and very simple, you know.
Sorry,
therefore you
let
can
me
use.
remove all the things on my desktop for everybody so we can get down to this. I'm betting I don't have a good sized image to actually grab
Oh, that's fine.
for this. What?
This one only lets you upload a 5 meg image to start with.
Oh, well then.
So we almost, for some people who have
What was
heavier
the other
40
one?
megapixel DSLRs.
Image compressor.
Image.
Imagecompressor.com.
This one?
Yeah.
Oh, image compressor right there.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Yes, that's fine. It's called optimism.
Yeah. I don't know what's in my downloads folder, so I don't want to like,
And there is also
Random image.
smallpdf.com.
Yeah.
And
So-
that one is for documents.
Essentially what you can do is you can take this image, drop it into here. What it does is it compresses the file so that it is essentially it maintains quality but reduces the file size of it as best as it can. And then once you have that file compressed, you can then upload that to your media library. And instead of this 2400 by 1600 image being 3 megabytes, it might only be 700 kilobytes because of that compression process. And that'll benefit you just from a standpoint of your pages will load faster, the images themselves will still maintain the quality that you want them to have. So that's one of the things that we have noticed a lot with sites is making sure that you're using the right sized image on the page. The vice versa of that, and this is something that I hit on during the training quite a bit, is when you choose a hero image, remember that the hero area is 1600 pixels wide by 500 pixels high. If you choose an image that's not 1600 pixels wide, that page area is going to stretch that image to 1600 pixels wide. It's also going to stretch the height of it as well. And so you're going to get not only an image that gets stretched and becomes very pixelated, but it's going to take up a lot of room up there in the hero area. So make sure that you are at least meeting that 1600 pixels wide with your hero images. And this is something that I see a lot with a lot of sites that come through and are just being built out, and you had a great image for your old site that was 800 pixels wide. You still want to use it as your hero image. It's not going to work when you come into the service. So you just have to be aware of that. So. One other thing that I wanted to touch on, this actually has come up a couple of times over the past week for me, is dealing with documents and dealing with essentially syllabi libraries. This question has come up through email and then also in the Open Lab this morning. So I just wanted to show, this is Gender and Women's Studies page, and they have a syllabi library that I kind of like what they've done with it. There are some navigation options that I would encourage them to take a look at here as well, just with jump links to these various areas. But essentially what they're using is what's called the documents page. And each one of these links is a quote unquote document within WordPress. And the document itself is linking off to some file. Some of these are PDFs, some of these are docs, Word documents. But it's a nice, clean way to provide information about the course and then provide information about, provide a link to the actual document itself. And I was troubleshooting some things with this for them, but I like the way that they have laid out this page with a lot of information on it. Like I said, the only thing that I would say is we would need to look at some navigation options here to make it jump a little bit better. But it's something to think about if you have a lot of documents that you want to make available to your audience. The documents page is something that you could take a peek at and see if that might meet your need. The other option, which I chatted with somebody about this morning, was WordPress is not meant to be a file management system. The media library is all in one. It's sorted in a particular way. There are no folders in it if you're not using the media categories functionality, really. Whereas if you were to request a Box project directory, Box actually is a file management system. You can create folders, you can create subfolders. It has good versioning history. You can make those links public, you can make them private to only campus individuals, or you can invite collaborators to those particular folders so only certain people can get access to links in there. So that's another thing that you might want to think about in regards to a number of groups that I've worked with who have just a large amount of documents that you want to make available to your audience. There are some options to think about there. So again, these are some of those things that we would really encourage folks to stop into an open lab and chat with us about, because we'd like to try and give you, as many options as we can to make a good choice for your audience, to make it a good choice for your users to easily get to that content that you want them to get to. So I feel like I was just training the class right there.
And scene.
And I was just about to ask, any questions? Moving on.
Oh, goodness.
That being said, anything? Are you just chatting? Okay. All right. Well, we'll call it there. I will be in touch with everyone tomorrow. I'll also send out a general update to the list as a whole for the WordPress update, and then I'll also just put in there the whole holiday schedule thing, just to make sure that everybody's aware of that. The limitations over the holidays to offer support as best we can. As always, don't hesitate to get in touch with us through our email, cms-support@doit.wis.edu. That goes into our ticket system, and then we'll answer those things as best we can. Most of you know my email address, so most of you can get in touch with me pretty easily if you have questions. But that's it. We'll end the stream there. Thanks for listening in, and we'll hopefully talk to everybody. We probably won't have one in December, just with the way that the vacation and the timing lines up, and plus the fact that we're not going to do a theme update. The core update's going to happen on Monday. I don't think we're going to do another big core update unless it's really an emergency thing.
Via security fix.
Yeah, so we won't do anything again until January. So I think things will go quiet for a bit for us. The developers have a wish list that they're going to try and work through as well to try and make some more feature improvements to the theme in general. And we're eager to have them do that because they've been sort of wanting to do a little bit more to build that out as well. So we're hoping to turn them loose a little bit. But we'll be in touch. Thanks for listening in. That's it. Goodbye, everybody.